Information about the jewelry shop robbery is published in the newspaper. Later that day, Don Alfredo is out playing cards with his friends, and one of them identifies his watch as the one described as stolen in the newspaper. The watch was given to him by Carlos. The friend goes to the police to report it. An inquisition is made at Don Alfredo's house by the police, and Doña Rosa and Don Alfredo find out that Carlos might be a criminal. The police then go to Carlos' house and Mercedes defends her son. One day, while out on the deck, Carlos sees Bruno and is mad with jealousy upon knowing that Bruno is traveling on the ship. Carlos starts acting strangely to keep Alondra and Bruno from meeting, and Alondra starts doubting Carlos's mental health. He keeps Alondra from leaving the room and even locks her inside when he steps out. Carlos decides to end the cruise early by disembarking in Havana, Cuba, so that Alondra and Bruno don't meet. He does not consult Alondra before making this decision. The ship stops at Havana, and the passengers get off to shop and distract themselves. The Havanan police inform the ship's captain that they've received communication from the Mexican police to detain Carlos Tamez as he's suspected of robbery. Carlos and Alondra, along with another couple they befriended on the boat, have a meal at a local restaurant. Carlos receives a letter from the captain and leaves. Alondra and her friend Blanca decide to go shopping, but stop by the bathroom first. When they leave, their table is occupied by Ramiro, Bruno, and two female friends. Alondra goes back to pick up her perfume she'd forgotten at the table and meets Bruno. Bruno is pleasantly surprised. He hands her her perfume and she leaves. The captain informs Carlos that the police are after him, but promises to protect him by keeping him on the boat. Carlos can't disembark at Havana, and he and Alondra continue with their cruise. Alondra is determined to leave the past behind and show her love to Carlos. One day, Carlos and Bruno face off, and Bruno confidently tells Carlos that Alondra doesn't love him. Don Alfredo, Doña Rosa, and Maria Elisa decide to go to San Miguel. Librada bids them goodbye at the train station. She then sees Raúl and runs after him. Raúl discovers he has a daughter with Maria Elisa. Librada also informs him that Maria Elisa has left for San Miguel. Bruno and Alondra have a hard time ignoring each other. One day, Bruno sees Alondra walking alone and seizes the opportunity to go talk to her. He steals a kiss from Alondra. The captain informs Carlos that the Spanish police have issued a warrant for his arrest and that he won't be able to protect him when they disembark in Spain. Carlos is distressed about the pain his arrest will cause Alondra. Thinking of Alondra's well-being, he requests Bruno to take care of her when he's arrested. Carlos leaves a note for Alondra. Once they get to Spain, Bruno defends Carlos before the authorities, but he turns himself in willingly. He's deported back to Mexico. Raúl arrives in San Miguel looking for Maria Elisa. Raúl and Maria Elisa clear things up and get engaged. Alondra finds out that Carlos disembarked without her and is heartbroken. Maria Elisa and Raúl get married. Bruno helps Alondra enter Spain by saying she is his cousin. Bruno and Alondra then part ways and she stays alone in a hotel in Santander. Alondra decides to return to Mexico to be near Carlos. She goes to book a ship, but there are none available. So she decides to move out of the hotel and into a guest house as she'll be staying a while. Bruno goes to deliver flowers to Alondra at the hotel, but he's informed that she's moved to a guest house. Bruno finds Alondra and asks her to go live with him in Madrid, but she turns him down. They go out for dinner that night and remember the moments they spent in the forest. Alondra receives news from Maria Elisa that Carlos may be sentenced to 20 years. Alondra is determined to wait for Carlos. Cristina gives birth. Baldomero dies. When a judge orders a psychiatric evaluation of Carlos to assess his mental health, Carlos pleads guilty to the crime for fear of being declared insane like his siblings, and he is sentenced to 20 years in prison. The Mexican Revolution begins. Raúl says goodbye to Maria Elisa to go to war. Cristina must postpone her trip to Spain because of the war. Alondra learns that her father is dead. She falls into a terrible depression. Bruno goes in search of Alondra upon learning she is ill. Alondra and Bruno rekindle the flame of passion. Alondra decides to banish sadness from her life, so she resigns herself to being Bruno's lover. Bruno and Alondra decide to take a trip through Europe. They leave on the same night. They tour Paris, Venice. They play on the beach. They go to the opera and are spotted by Bruno's associates and their wives. They're all captivated by Alondra's beauty and assume her to be his wife. Bruno introduces Alondra to his partners and they invite them to dinner. However, Alondra feels uncomfortable, so they make an excuse to leave. Bruno and Alondra spend the night together in Bruno's house in Madrid. They leave in the morning to look for an apartment for Alondra, as she doesn't want to stay in a house meant for his wife. A month goes by and Alondra settles into her new apartment. Bruno and Alondra are very happy together. One afternoon, Alondra informs Bruno that she's expecting a child. Bruno is overjoyed. Cristina embarks on her journey to reunite with Bruno. When they arrive in New York, she writes Bruno a letter to inform that she's on her way, but it doesn't get to him. When she arrives in Spain, Bruno doesn't pick her up at the station as he's unaware of her arrival. Since she doesn't know the address of the house, she takes the children and her aunt to a hotel, then goes to Bruno's office. Bruno's associates are surprised to meet Cristina, and they realize that Alondra is his lover. Bruno is on vacation with Alondra. He receives a phone call from the office informing him of his wife's arrival. Meanwhile, in Mexico, Carlos receives a visit from Panchito, the guy he drank with for the 4 days he doesn't remember. Panchito tells him everything that happened that night, that they got drunk and slept on the street, and then at night he heard police whistles, so he became alarmed thinking the police were looking for him. And then a man came running and tripped over him. He tried to wake up Carlos but couldn't, so he ran away alone. Pancho also describes the appearance of the man. Carlos is excited about Pancho's revelation. Bruno informs Alondra of his wife's arrival. On their way back, Alondra tries to end their relationship, telling him that his wife and children need him, but Bruno begs her not to leave him. When they get to their apartment, he tells her that he'll get divorced, and they'll get married. Alondra forbids Bruno from separating from his wife. Bruno cries, begging Alondra not to leave him, and Alondra accepts to continue being his lover.